A microphone hit the floor. That's how quiet it got inside Studio 33 at Television City. It was April 1974. The air conditioning was humming, the lights were hot, and 50 crew members were holding their breath, staring at an empty chair. You think you know the story of Carol Burnett. You know the ear tug. You know the Tarzan yell. You remember sitting on the carpet in front of the console TV, watching the only woman who could make the whole family laugh without ever working blue. They called her the Queen of Comedy, the kindest lady in Hollywood. But here is the thing about kindness in this town. The sharks mistake it for weakness. For 90 years, Carol kept her mouth shut. She preserved the grace, the elegance, the illusion that everything behind the curtain was just as joyful as it was in front of it. But silence has an expiration date. And when Carol finally spoke to Rolling Stone, she didn't just open a window, she kicked down the door on the men who tried to break her. These weren't strangers. These were the legends, the husbands, the partners, the icons we worshipped. And they all made the same fatal error. They thought they could walk all over Carol Burnett. Let's start with the betrayal that happened right under the lights. Harvey Korman. You couldn't picture Carol without him. They were synchronized swimmers in a sea of laughter. But by 1974, with 4 Emmys on the shelf and ratings through the roof, Harvey's ego had grown too big for the dressing room. He was jealous, plain and simple. He felt the spotlight shifting, felt he was becoming just a second banana. It came to a head over a shadow, a lighting error during a rehearsal with Petula Clark. Harvey didn't just complain, he exploded. He threw his script on the floor and screamed, "All these years and no one can get it right." When the director tried to calm him, Harvey sneered that Carol didn't care. That was the match in the powder keg. Carol didn't yell. She didn't throw a tantrum. She walked out from the audience, stood on that stage, and delivered a line that cut colder than ice. "Harvey, I've had enough. If you can't respect everyone here, then you don't need to be here at all." He walked out. For 3 days, Hollywood held its breath. The Los Angeles Herald-Examiner ran the headline everyone feared. Harvey Korman walks out. Imagine the steel it took to sit in that silence. A camera operator watched her sit there for 30 minutes, just staring at his empty chair, whispering, "I didn't want things to happen this way." She fired her other half. She chose dignity over the duo. When he crawled back 3 days later, apologizing to the crew, Carol hugged him. The audience cheered. But look closely at the tapes from 1975 onward. Something is different. The trust was cracked. As Carol later said, "Harvey made me laugh the most, and he gave me the biggest headaches." But if Harvey was a headache, Joe Hamilton was a heartbreak. This one hurts. This one feels personal to anyone who has ever built a life with someone, only to realize you were building their empire, not yours. Joe wasn't just her husband. He was the producer, the man who was supposed to protect her. They were CBS's golden couple. But by 1979, the rot had set in. Success is a heavy burden for a man who needs to be in control, and Joe Hamilton started gripping the reins until his knuckles turned white. He started cutting the emotional segments from the show. "Just comedy," he said. Carol fought him. She knew you needed heart. But he stopped listening. Then came the late nights. The dinners at the chart house with a young editor. The whispers in the hallway that Carol had to pretend she didn't hear. Then came the knife in the back. Carol is sitting with her lawyer, reviewing contracts. And there it is. Joe had set up Hamilton Productions. He had registered her ideas, her sketches, like the ones that became Mama's Family, under his name. She confronted him in his office. She asked him if it was fair to steal what they built. And Joe Hamilton, the father of her children, looked her in the eye and said the 5 words that end a marriage faster than infidelity. "This is business, Carol. It's not personal." She filed for divorce the next year. It got ugly. He wanted 40% of her life's work. He wanted the rights to her name. She fought him, not for the money, but for her identity. When she won, she didn't gloat. She just sent white flowers to his funeral years later with a note. Be at peace, Joe. Class, pure class, even when they don't deserve it. But the disrespect wasn't limited to her inner circle. It came from the top of the mountain. It came from the men who thought they defined what funny was. Let's talk about Cary Grant, the epitome of charm, right? The man looked like he was carved out of marble and dipped in sophistication. The Beverly Hilton. Carol is glowing in crimson, the new star of CBS. She walks over to congratulate Grant on a Lifetime Achievement Award. She's a fan. She's respectful. And Grant? He looks at her with that famous smile and says, loud enough for the table to hear, "Oh, that show where she waves her arms around and makes silly faces. I don't understand why people enjoy that sort of thing. Can you feel the air leave the room?" He mocked her to her face. He dismissed the joy she brought to millions as silly. He told the press he preferred sophisticated humor. Carol's response? She didn't throw a drink. She simply said, "Maybe people prefer laughing with someone real rather than with perfection." She walked away, and she never worked with him. When Paramount tried to pair them up in 1970, she said no. She knew her worth. She knew that making a tired housewife laugh after a long day was worth 10 times more than Cary Grant's approval. And then there was the 3 a.m. phone call. Marlon Brando, The Godfather. July 1972. The phone rings in Coldwater Canyon. Carol answers, groggy, terrified it's an emergency. "Carol, this is Marlon Brando." He kept her on the line for 30 minutes. He told her she was talented. Then the voice dropped. It got low. It got uncomfortable. He wasn't talking to a peer. He was talking to a conquest. He crossed the line from admiration to something predatory. Carol hung up on Marlon Brando. Think about that. She told the biggest star in the world, "I have to work tomorrow." But the press spun it. They called him enamored. They made it a joke. But Carol knew. She knew the difference between a compliment and a hunt. She never let herself be in a room with him again. But the longest, coldest war of all was with the man who controls Saturday night, Lorne Michaels. For 50 years, people asked, why hasn't Carol Burnett hosted SNL? She's the mother of sketch comedy. It's like not inviting Babe Ruth to the All-Star game. The truth? Lorne didn't want her. Back in '76, when SNL was the new, edgy kid on the block, Lorne called Carol the face of old television. He thought she was too soft, too nice. He rejected a sponsor's request to have her on. He turned his nose up at the woman who paved the road he was driving on. There is a moment from 1991 that chills the blood. An award show. Carol takes the stage. The room stands up. Thunderous applause. A legend. Minutes later, Lorne Michaels speaks. The camera cuts to Carol. She isn't clapping. She isn't frowning. She is sitting perfectly still, a faint iron smile on her lips, staring right through him. The coldest look in Hollywood, they called it. She waited him out. In 2023, when NBC finally tried to make nice with a special honoring her, they asked if she regretted the snub, and at 90 years old, Carol Burnett finally dropped the hammer. "I guess they didn't need me," she said, flashing that famous smile. "But I didn't need them either." That is the headline. That is the story. She didn't need Harvey's approval to be funny. She didn't need Joe's permission to be a powerhouse. She didn't need Cary Grant's sophistication, Marlon Brando's attention, or Lorne Michaels' stage. They are all gone, or gray, or fading into the history books. Joe is gone. Harvey is gone. Grant is gone. But Carol? Carol is still here. She sits in her home in Santa Barbara, looking out at the ocean. The phone doesn't ring at 3 a.m. anymore. The lawyers are quiet. The studio lights are dim. But sometimes, silence isn't empty. Sometimes, it's the sound of winning.